It's time for another visit from the doctor.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the start of your work week, and we're going to get you kick things off here, all things silver and black on Locked On Spurs. And you just heard we're having another visit by the doctor. Yes, Dr. Ryan McCorkle is back for his weekly visit, and we're going to be talking about exactly what an adductor tightness is. And by the way, I'll let everybody know my conversation with them before we recorded this show. I felt like an idiot, just put it that way. Also, what about back-to-backs? What do players go through when they have to face a situation? What do medical staffs for an NBA team have to do to prepare players for the rigorous grind of an NBA season, but in a back-to-back situation? And thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever we get podcasts. Is going to bring him on. He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle, an ER doc at St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center, and he's with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. Follow him on Twitter at Austin ER Doc. So I learned a big lesson today, doctor. I learned adductor has nothing to do with the core, the stomach muscles. I feel like in the belly, doctor.
You should not feel like a dummy, Jeff. That a lot of people consider the proximal muscles or the muscles that are kind of near the center of the body, including those upper thigh muscles, as part of your core. So there's no shame in thinking that that's part of the abdominal musculature. But adductors are actually in your inner thigh. So
all right. Well,
consider that part of the core.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that. Yeah, I got all cocky, everybody. I thought I knew my stuff before we hit record. And lo and behold, Dr. Ryan says, yeah, you're a little bit off, Jeff. It has nothing to do with that. But why are we talking about adductors and thigh? Well, because recently, Spurs Romeo Langford is out with adductor tightness. Now, Dr. and I want to make things very clear. We're recording this way ahead of today, Monday. So keep that in mind. You know, we don't have injuries lists for Spurs versus Suns, Spurs versus Wizards. And so keep that in mind. But nevertheless, the Spurs did see one of their players suffer an adductor tightness situation. Popovich did talk about it ahead of the game versus the Lakers, doctor. He said that it's very, very painful. What is it? What is Romeo Langford going through?
So the major movement of the lower leg, obviously a lot of people know what flexion and extension is. You know, flexion being bringing it up towards your face, extension being backwards. So the side-to-side motion of the leg is called, in medical terms, abduction and adduction. So those sound really similar when you're trying to talk to somebody. So the shorthand we use is abduction and adduction, so that people can hear the difference in what we're saying. So the ones that Romeo Langford is hurt are the adductor muscles. Those being the ones on the inner thigh, adductor brevis, adductor longus, the gracilis muscle, the pectineus. These muscles bring the leg from away from the midline of the body towards the midline of the body. That's why we call it adduction. You're adding the leg to the midline. So if you are lifting your leg up and out to the side, the action of bringing it back towards your other leg, that's adduction, and those are the muscles that Romeo has hurt. So you can imagine that involves any time that he pushes off to move laterally, that those things are just going to be on fire. And that's really going to limit how well you can play defense or move explosively on an NBA court. And that's why it's going to have him out for a little bit.
Pop, as I mentioned earlier, Pop said that it's very painful, at least in his opinion. Dr. Popovich is not a doctor, but at least that's what he relayed to the media. Are they painful? What causes that immense pain, and is it back to the whole rest, ice compression, all that stuff? How does Romeo treat this?
Yes, it is. It's the same ricin therapy that you now have down. You talked about maybe missing what a what an adductor muscle was, but you've got ricin
Right.
therapy down. So your progress is
Yes, progress. Yes.
Yeah.
Give me my medical degree already. I'm ready.
So yeah, the ricin therapy, you're spot on. The reason why it's so painful is just what you correctly pointed out, is that this is kind of part of the core musculature. Now, it's not one of the abdominal muscles, but it's still right there at your core. And if it's a knee, if it's an ankle, those kind of things, you can immobilize the joint and kind of eliminate the pain from there. Put somebody on crutches, put them into a brace so that knee or ankle doesn't move, that kind of thing. With the core muscle, like the adductor muscles, any movement where you try to walk, turn, do anything is going to cause that thing to just, like you're getting an ice pick right there in the inner part of your thigh. So very painful, and almost every human movement requires the use of those muscles.
Ouch, yeah, that does sound painful. Speaking of Romeo Langford, since he's been in the NBA with Boston until now, he's kind of been injury prone, whether it be the adductor that he's going through, and even in Boston, where he suffered some pretty bad injuries where he couldn't really get his NBA career going. Now, this season with San Antonio, it looks like it's in that direction, but this is not the first time we've seen a player on seen Romeo Langford at least on the IR list more often than not. In your field, when you hear about a player that just is constantly getting hit with the injury bug, does that tell you anything about their biology, their body? What do you think of when you hear about an injury prone player?
I think injury prone can be a real albatross that you can hang around the neck of a player. Mm-hmm. A lot of these injuries are it's bad luck. And one injury just leads to others. It's not that there's something inherently unique about their biology, unless it's, something like we talked previously about super tall players being, more apt to get foot injuries, that kind of thing. But as far as an individual player goes, if the injuries are often related, you hurt one thing, you're overcompensating, so you hurt something else, that kind of thing. Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind with Romeo's injury and what you're talking about a series of injuries is something else we've kind of touched on previously, being that younger players, it tends to take them time to come around to understand the importance of nutrition for their careers. I think the flip side of that is not understanding the importance of stretching for their careers. They've never really had to do it. It's just kind of something you did at the beginning of practice. And they don't realize that a regular approach to stretching before, after, doing massage, doing yoga is going to lengthen their career and decrease the number of injuries they have. So I think if you're prone to straining these adductor, abductors, quads, hams, and it happens repetitively, it's that somebody has not really gotten to them to explain that they need to be on a yoga and stretching program on non-game days.
A personal story. It was one time I had to get a workout in. I felt my body just ready. Like my mind and my body were in sync. I'm working remotely, which means I'm sitting down, and I go to the gym and I'm raring to go. I don't need to stretch. I'm good. I feel energetic. Doctor, I just got on the treadmill and just started going. No warm up, nothing. I'm going to guess about 15 minutes in, it felt like somebody hit me with a sledgehammer and my calf muscle. The thing just tightened up so bad where I initially reacted, and I remember stopping the treadmill and kind of like, just, all right, I'll shake it off, put some mud on it. You're good. Keep on going. I kept on going and I couldn't finish it. And I looked back, it's like, I didn't stretch at all. So I think that sums up what could happen to you if a person at any age doesn't stretch properly.
Autobots, roll out.
Now I want to talk to you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So here's how it works. You pick 2 to 6 players. If they go on to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Eurobasket, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in just 60 seconds or less. It's very easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Here's what you got to do. Download the PrizePicks app or simply go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get themselves a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. You deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
Autobots, roll out.
Yeah, absolutely. At any age, really, and really, the older you get, the more important it becomes. We saw Kareem and Robert Parrish incorporate yoga and extended their careers. First ones to play into their 40s.
Right.
It really can it does so much for your body, especially those core muscles, your abs, your low back, the hamstrings, quads, abductors, and adductors that will really start to cause you problems as you get older. And again, it's these young players too that don't feel like they need to warm up. You feel indestructible. Your body's always done whatever you wanted with whatever nutrition you give it and whatever warm up you give it, because you're a elite level athlete. You know, one of the best athletes on the planet, being an NBA player, and you don't. It takes some time before you have to develop a healthy respect for what stretching and yoga will do to lengthen your career and keep you off the disabled list.
Yeah, we didn't have this on the agenda for today's show, but I got to ask you, because I was thinking about stretching and preparing for games, and we're talking about the back-to-back situation just a bit. But I'm seeing a lot more NBA, or just athletes in general, with these circular red dots across their back and their shoulders and their neck. They're like big giant hickeys, but it's
because they're big giant hickeys.
It's because they're big giant. Yeah, exactly. What is that? I've even had fans ask me, like, what are those red dots on Luka Doncic's back? For example. What is that? What is that? Some sort of treatment for the muscles?
Yes, it's something called cupping. So that's what I mean. It literally is big giant hickeys, because it's these suction cups that create suction right there on the muscle. But it also, obviously, the exact same concept. The suction motion creates little hemorrhages and the superficial blood vessels there, creating, for lack of a better term, a hickey from the cupping. And that's what those circles are.
What are they supposed to accomplish? Like, what's the point of it?
It's not unrelated to like acupuncture.
Okay.
I've done a lot of work with acupuncture. I got certified with my anatomy professor when I was in medical school. And there is good evidence about treating musculoskeletal injuries with things like acupressure, acupuncture, targeted massage, and cupping kind of falls into that category. I have not seen specific, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blinded studies that, are rigorously performed to show that cupping definitely has benefit. But if it works for athletes and they feel better and it keeps them on the court, there's no reason not to try it. There's other than having the hickey, there's no real downside to it. So I say the placebo effect is real. So even if it is just placebo effect, if it makes their bodies feel better, keeps them on the court, there's no downside to it. That's fine. I just, as a scientist, haven't seen the data yet that says cupping absolutely, definitely works.
Right. Yeah. Now, we're talking. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been noticing an increase in that in, whether it be NBA or NFL or what have you, you've just seen it. Even like MMA fighters. I mean, you've seen it, on their back. I mean, it's obvious. You can't not help but notice when you see them walking out. Once again, we're talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He is an ER doc at St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center. Follow him on Twitter at Austin ER Doc and on Instagram, Austin EM Doc. Make sure to do it right now. I want to circle back to Romeo Langford and the adductor injury. What can fans do? Spurs fans that are trying to New Year's resolution, get back in shape. We talked about stretching important. What kind of exercises will help lessen the chances of them suffering something similar to what Romeo Langford did?
Well, a lot of the data in recent years, instead of just doing what we used to do, with our coaches when we played high school sports, of just doing that, 10-minute stretching before starting, there's some conflicting data on whether that's really helpful. But really, the most important thing is a warm up beforehand, and that's why you see teams be so obsessive about going out there before games, breaking a sweat, going through game-like motions, but just in a slower way, to get those muscles warmed up and used to doing game motions beforehand. Then after a game or practice is when stretching is important. Now you've used those muscles, and now the stretching is important afterwards and on days in between. I think a regular stretching routine after games and practice is important, and I really feel that the practice of yoga in between is what almost all NBA teams now have a yoga instructor, and they are doing this both in the off season and on off days, because going through that routine makes a huge difference in preventing injuries with muscle strains and those core muscles especially.
All right, well, let's go. That's a perfect way to segue into our next topic, and that is the back-to-back. The Spurs just recently went through a back-to-back, playing at the Clippers, at the Lakers. They've already gone through several of them. You look at some of the numbers. The Spurs, I believe, are about 3-8 in their first game of a back-to-back, and they've only won, as of this recording, one game on the second game of a back-to-back. But you talk about stretching and warming up and whatnot. If you're on an NBA staff, or in this case, we're using the Spurs as an example, how do you manage the bodies of an NBA player, whether it be Langford or Keldon or Sohan, to withstand playing on back-to-back nights? I mean, just look at the Spurs right now. They just came off, like I said, playing against the Clippers and Lakers. Now, maybe that's a little different because they're in one arena, one city, one gym, so maybe that helps. But we've seen them play at Detroit and then at Brooklyn, the travel and whatnot. How do you think the doctors on the Spurs staff will manage players' bodies in that situation?
Well, this is something that the Spurs have been on the cutting edge of. That Pop just kind of made a decision, with the input of the medical staff, back even kind of the end part of Tim Duncan's career, and then a lot with Kawhi, was managing there's tons of data out there showing the toll that this 82 game season in a compressed amount of time takes on NBA players' bodies. That incorporates the travel, back-to-backs, and even, back-to-backs is what gets the most attention because it is, you're trying to play an NBA caliber game on 2 consecutive nights, but the real damage that people see is more NBA teams have usually 1 or 2 stretches during the season where they're playing 4 and 5 nights or 4 and 6 nights, and that's even worse than just a simple back-to-back. So what you have to remember, especially with a young team like the Spurs, they've started out playing high school, then some of them college or whatever, but it was at most usually 2 games a week. Now you're talking about 4 and 5 days, 4 and 6 days, playing back-to-back, and that level of talent increases exponentially at each level. So the demands on the body to compete at that level are also increased exponentially. So when you're having to generate that level of force and fitness and exponentially greater than the level that you previously played on, and do that with more frequency, you're going to see the body break down if you don't do something.
Autobots, roll out!
Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box out of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed. So you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax. Full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes is required. See guaranteed deals at turbotax.com/guarantees.
Autobots, roll out.
Right. Yeah. The load management, the NBA even took exception to it. Remember that game at Miami, the infamous Timmy, Manu, Tony, Danny Green go home. It was a national game. The Spurs are fined for that, for doing that load management. But that's been the trend lately. Players, teams announce so-and-so's going to be out, and that's the end of it. Do you think the NBA, credit the NBA, they've lessened the amount of back-to-backs for every team. It's not as bad as it used to be. And you mentioned that. I remember the days of like 4 games and 3 nights, those scenarios. But there's been the discussion of lessening the amount of games in the NBA season altogether, something for maybe shade under 82. Do you think that would help these athletes prolong their careers?
Yes, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the talk is trying to go to like a 72 game season. And you can see that, like, there's statistics that show that, teams have 9% greater rate of losing on a second night of a back-to-back. It's statistically significant. And it's the same with the number of injuries. You're going to see more injuries in players who play on back-to-back nights, 4 out of 5 or 4 out of 6. So, people go back to the 80s, early 90s kind of, as they think of things as the good old days or the golden era of players playing every night, but it's because their careers were shorter. People were washed when they were 32 or 33 years old. Now they're being able to play until, like LeBron, 38, still at a high level, because you are load managing those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's but there's a cost to that too. I guess we saw last night with the kid who flew from Argentina to see Jimmy Butler play, but he was on load management and didn't know that till he got there. So I feel like the NBA teams are kind of forced to do this if they're going to extend the length of their players' careers. But that, I think, cutting the number of games in a season still allows fans to know, hey, I've been waiting this whole year for Steph Curry to come to my town. How do I know that he's not going to sit for load management the one night he comes through my town? At least if we reduce the total number of games, more likely that players are going to play all those games, and people who, save up and are trying to do something for their family, something that's, a kid looks forward to all year long, he isn't going to show up and his favorite player is not going to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did catch that. And back when it was, I guess, frowned upon, because when the Spurs started doing it, it was very frowned upon. Do you remember one fan actually tried to sue the Spurs for arresting players? There was a fan. I remember that. There was a lawsuit filed for load management, and fans really take it seriously. Yeah, it's a delicate balance. You got NBA teams that want to preserve their players' health. You got the NBA itself, hoping marquee players are not sitting out. The financial side of things and then the fan side of things is definitely interesting. But all in all, you're right. The Spurs have done a really good job at preserving players' health, whether it be in a back-to-back situation or not. In these back-to-back situations, Doc, what would you tell your players if you're on that, coaching staff, the doctor's staff there? What would be really important for you that you would love to see them do in a back-to-back situation, whether that be nutrition-wise, hydration-wise? What would be the plan of attack?
I mean, I think the only plan of attack is the one that you're seeing, where I would say my best players, I would not play them on both nights of a back-to-back. Okay. I would strategically pick a game where this one is more important based on where we are in the standings, or, where the other team is, that kind of thing, and get the most bang for your buck of playing them on one and not the other. Because, I really think that is something that the NBA has to look at getting rid of, is getting rid of back-to-backs, getting rid of 4 games in 5 nights or 4 games in 6 nights. And I think that's doable. If you go to a 72 game season and or stretch out the season over another month, you can decrease those things. And people point back, people who get good old days syndrome, which happen to be, people of our age, Jeff, who tend to listen to podcasts, may have a little bit of tendency to good old day syndrome. And they'll say Jordan played every night, so you knew he was going to be there on his one time through your city.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. Then they, for some reason, magically forget that he, took 2.5 years off in the middle of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And then another break between the Bulls and going to the Wizards. So that's just, he took his 3-year break during the middle of his career so that it was prolonged as much as it was.
Yeah, maybe that was his load management.
Exactly. You have a specific number of games that the average NBA body can go through. Karl Malone was an outlier. Kareem was an outlier, but those are the exceptions that prove the rule. So whether or not you do that with load management by I'm not going to play back-to-backs, or you have to take 2.5 years off in the middle of your career, the only way to stay at that level of performance is to decrease the times that you have to go back-to-back or that frequently a week.
What are your thoughts on Kawhi Leonard? Since the San Antonio days till now, he really has never, I'll probably be corrected, but let's just say there are more seasons in his NBA career where he does not play an 82-game season or even close to 80. And you're looking at 60s and 50s. I mean, he takes load management to the next level. What are your thoughts on him and his approach?
Well, I think, this is just my opinion. I think he's a different guy, right? I think we've known that since he was here in San Antonio. He just has a different mindset. And if your mindset, he's for sure one of the 5 to 8 most talented players in all the NBA. There's no question about that. And you haven't seen any drop off in his performance from when he started to now. He doesn't play very often, but when he goes out there doesn't appear to be any. If anything, he's even more efficient than he was when he started. But you have to have, I think, an NBA mindset where I don't care about career length accomplishments. You're not going to, LeBron, I think, started out knowing that he wanted to be the greatest scorer in the history of the game. And that means you've got to go out there every night and put those up if you're going to catch Kareem. So I think someone like Kawhi just has a totally different mindset in that I don't care about those career counting stat goals. I will play less games and be fresher in the postseason. And I care more about how many finals can I get to, how many championships can I win. And the best way to do that is to play less in the regular season. And I think that's one way to approach it. You're going to sacrifice probably the goodwill from the fans, and you're going to sacrifice any hope of accumulating stats over a career, but you probably will play for longer and a higher level.
Or perhaps financially, maybe teams don't want to pay out as much, for a rental. For that's pretty much what he is. You're going to rent him for, instead of a full season, maybe a half a season. There's that. So yeah, it's
depends on what you can do, right?
Look, against San Antonio, he definitely didn't show any where. He just busted up San Antonio in San Antonio. So it's definitely interesting. Yeah, just look, Spurs fans, we didn't mean to open old wounds there, but I had to ask. We're talking about
it's a financial decision too, right? Because
yeah,
being able to perform at that level is going to ensure Kawhi will probably sign 3, maybe 4 max contracts over the length of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really proven in Toronto that I can play halftime and still bring your team a championship. And that possibility will make them open up that pocketbook. And you can't really argue with 4 max contracts.
Absolutely not. Once again, we are talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Follow him on Twitter at AustinERDoc. He's with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. He's going to brag about that in just a few seconds. But we cannot let Doctor go without getting a sneaker update. So there's got to be more additions to your sneaker collection, right? Right, Doctor? What do you got for us?
Well, you know what? I'm trying now at this point to just do like 1 in, 1 out. So there's a point where I look and like, if I need this new sneaker that badly that I have to have it, then I need to make a decision. on the current collection and sell one that I have. Just it maybe even a self-preservation thing for space. I have a whole room for sneakers, and it gets filled up really quick. So what's really been occupying my time lately is doing customs. So I just finished working on a pair that of my college colors with my college number on them, and then I wanted them to look vintage, since I haven't been in college in 30 years now. So I soaked them in coffee for 2.5 days, and they came out just looking excellent.
Nice.
Vintage, aged, maroon, and kind of a yellowed white, and then had my number 33 on the side. And now I am working on some reverse mocha Travis Scott lows with the painting the swoosh, the burnt orange of the Longhorns for the football season next year. And the other one I'm working on is another Travis Scott reverse mocha with a green toe box and a black swoosh for the Austin FC season this year. So those are my customs that I'm working on right now.
I'm waiting for the day where Dr. Ryan texts me and saying, like, I love to do my next spot on Locked On Spurs, but I've retired as a doctor. And I want to announce that I am now a shoe sneaker seller. And I have my store opened up at the local mall. My online store is open, and check out my customs. That's what I'm going to hear that one day, right, Doctor?
Oh man, from your lips to whoever's in charge of making that happen for me. I would love to do that. That would be awesome.
Well, and by the way, everybody, you really got to follow him on Twitter at AustinEMDoc. There you can see the sneakers. There you can see all that fire that he's talking about. And speaking of talking about and all that fire, that good stuff, what's going on with the backstage medical and concierge medicine practice, Doctor? What's cooking?
We're ramping up for the Austin FC season. Is going to start here in 1 month. Our first game is February 25th. So just got all the scheduling done to get all the doctors out there for those games. That's a long season. It goes all the way from February and into October if we make the playoffs again. Then of course the UT football season coming up, and a lot of good concerts around the Austin area, and seeing my concierge folks in addition to working here in the ER.
Absolutely. Yep. He is a doctor with the St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center, as well as we just talked about the backstage medical and concierge medicine practice. Follow Dr. Ryan on Twitter at AustinERDoc. Great follow. He'll talk your ear off about sneakers, and perhaps he'll give you some helpful tips in maintaining a nice, healthy lifestyle. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Check out Locked On Game to Game, all the recaps, all the stats, everything you need, local analysis with Game to Game NBA only in the Locked On Network. So for Dr. Ryan McCorkle, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock in this episode of Locked On Spurs.